Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, presented by Zwift for Stage 18 of the Vuelta. And if you listen to our rest day recap, you know tactically that we said nothing will happen in the third week. That was deliberate, right? We were just baiting the teams into proving us wrong, which they might like to do. So this stage from Trujillo to Alto del Piornal, which has shallow gradient climbs, 2 reps of Piornal. I'm not sure if it's from a different angle or the same one. Anyway, it's a 13K, 5% climb, and it's steady too. No fake news here. It is like 5% all the way. So hard to get gaps. Before then was the Alto de la Desespera. How long is that? 1,500 meters, 10.3% after 4.3K, 6% climb. So that was actually the steepest part of the race. But that's sort of after the break is gone. And yeah, it was interesting to see who would get in the break again. Would Verona get freedom, Carapaz, Vine for KOM points? There is 2 Cat 1 climbs after all, even though they aren't that difficult. And we did have a huge break, Benji. Monstrous again. And I thought, I had a little siesta. I thought this is going to be a nailed on break. They'll battle on the last climb and GC will roll in together.
I thought something similar when I saw it, especially knowing that a Quickstep doesn't have the team to control it, so it would depend on other teams to try and make something of the stage to make sure that the break doesn't win, for it not to being a break win. Now, that break was gigantic, you mentioned it, and it's basically like 1/3 of the peloton with all the people that have left the peloton, if I had my guess going. Now, we've got multiple riders for Jumbo, Omen and Gesing, 4 riders from EF, Kudus, Podden, Shaw, Carfi, so trying to get something out of the stage, 2 riders from Bahrain, Mader, Zambanini, Nibali in their first Dana. He actually becomes a useful character in this stage after we low-key roasted him yesterday, not mentioning that he came 4th in the Giro, which was our bad, I think. Now, we also had the likes of 2 riders from UAE in that front group, and that was Soler. And next to that, another rider in that group was Oliveira, also for that team. I think Verona and Oliveira were in the breakaway as well, which was, well, Oliveira, Nelson Oliveira from Movistar. I know this is confusing. Ivo Oliveira for UAE. There's 2 different Oliveiras in this breakaway, so we need to confirm every single time the first name as well. Otherwise, you don't know who we're talking about. I think those are the most important names in this breakaway, to be honest. There's also a Craddock once again, a Cataldo, a Meurice, a Pino, for example, a Gisbert, Higuita, Carapaz, Gegenhardt as well, and I'd say those are the most important names of this group. So we'll keep it at that for now. And then something happens in the peloton. Breakaway aside, something happens in the peloton, and it's before we get a broadcast, unfortunately. There's a crash, and it's actually a pretty big crash with roughly 10 riders on the right side of the road. We only saw mobile footage of it afterwards, uploaded by the Vuelta Twitter. It's on there if you want to see it. I'd advise not to, because it was pretty horrific to see. Fine sitting on the floor, Mess Pedersen standing up, Carlos Rodriguez looking pretty banged up, and the consequences are severe in the sense that we lose Jay Vine as our KOM leader in this stage very early on, before the first proper climb. And it's a bummer for the race, because losing a leader is horrendous. Losing someone that's competing for lead is horrendous. Losing anyone is really horrendous, but it makes it worse when they're actually like validly competing for stuff in the race as well. And that means that Carapaz, who is in the breakaway, is virtually KOM leader. Mess Pedersen looks like he was relatively fine during the crash, but Rodriguez was pretty banged up as well. Like, yeah, it sucks, right? Not much else we can say about that crash.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is that I don't think Jay has any head injuries, and I think no broken bones, luckily. Maybe just a deep cut or
Okay.
something. So he's still getting checked out, but it's looking like, despite it being a high speed crash, never good, but hopefully it's not the worst it could have been. So thoughts with him. He had a great Vuelta. Shame to see him out like that, of course. But speaking of Vine, who came through Zwift Academy registration is still open now if you want to sign up. Or if you want to check out the Zwift Hub, which is on sale from the 3rd of October in the UK, US, and mainland Europe, you can go to Zwift.com to check it out. It's Zwift's new smart trainer, more than competitively priced in the market. Even comes pre-installed with the cassette of your choice, 8 to 12 speed, Shimano, SRAM, or Campax. So go to Zwift.com, to check that out or to start your free 7-day trial. But this stage got lit up, Benji. That 32-man break, kind of believed what happened behind.
Yeah, exactly. We had a move by the team that yesterday we spoke about that they were not working well together, and today they arguably did, in my opinion. Now, it wasn't perfect everywhere, but let's talk about what they did first. We had Ivo Oliveira in the breakaway already. We had Soler in the breakaway, so two UAE riders up there. The gap was, I think, 6 minutes roughly at that point in the race, and we come towards a smaller climb in the middle of the stage, the steeper of the three climbs, but the shortest one, the Alto de la Desespera. And we see a move from the peloton by McNulty launching Almeida from the peloton. So those two riders get a bit of a gap on the peloton, and this is still before broadcast properly starts. And we see that gap opening up until it's like 1 minute 30 on the peloton. So it was actually succeeding quite well on that Desespera climb in the initial parts of the descent. But then McNulty pulls off in that group, and then there needs to be a reaction from UAE. Then one of the two UAE riders up front needs to react and needs to get towards Almeida, who is now riding solo in this valley right now. And I think that's the part of their plan that didn't work ideally. I think that's the part where they could have done better, where they didn't get their riders, their satellite riders up front, to Almeida fast enough, meaning that in the valleys and in the descents, he was working on his own regard. And these are the pedaling descents as well, which is obviously not ideal because you still spend energy doing so. And Ivo Oliveira is the first one that waits. He waits before we get to that Alto de Piornal first climb. And he actually gets to Almeida before we get to that climb because he still helps a bit in the valley. But then the climb comes, and then the reaction from the peloton comes. And when you see that situation, Patrick, when you see that situation where Oliveira's facing Almeida, just ahead, like a minute 20 on the peloton now, peloton being paced by both Astana and Movistar, mainly Astana at that point, what are you thinking to yourself?
I mean, I said UAE were the only team. I said they were the strongest team in the race physically yesterday. Like, not they don't have the strongest rider, but across a group of four, they have the strongest 4 or 5. They have the only team with two leaders in genuine GC position threat. But this was just too early. It's just too early. I think you look, Almeida gained like 20 seconds plus on Rodriguez in a short burst yesterday. Now he's sort of doing the opposite end of that spectrum. And is it helping Ayuso? I guess. He gets to sit in a seat. It's hurting Rodriguez, who's having a much harder overall stage, who's crashed. So that is helping Almeida move up and Ayuso get some breathing room behind him. But I really think they should have done this on the second last Piornal. I really think you pace with McNulty there and you have Soler for the last climb would be very, very strong. He just sits on the brake the whole way. Or you use Almeida Ayuso 1-2 attacks. The way they did this, it ended up just not working at all.
But the aspect that I have against that is that I think it's also kind of the parkour making this that way, as in UAE saw that initial climb as the steepest one, as the one where differences could be made and that gap could have been made initially. I fear that if they did this at the Pure Null, the first Pure Null, that they might not have been able to make the gap at the top of the Pure Null climb. And it depends, Rodriguez wasn't looking good. So technically, in hindsight, they probably could have done it later and Rodriguez would have dropped on that second Pure or last Pure Null anyway. But that's like the one thing I saw to it. And there was another team that actually had plans for the second last Pure Null, and it's one of the teams pacing in the peloton. But I guess we'll first talk a bit more what happens in the breakaway before we get to that aspect. Basically, we get a situation where the breakaway is falling apart significantly. I don't know which one was the first one that made the move, to be honest. Was it Hugh Carthy?
Huge. He went up the road, yeah. Carapaz, Hessink, Pinot joined him, I think.
Okay. And Gisbert?
Anagita and Gilbert, I think maybe. Gisbert went ahead, I think, on last Piornal for ages. But yeah, Hessink was working for Omen at the base of the climb. I was like, this is the wrong way around. Hessink's going to drop him. So he went off after Carthy. I still thought they were going to win Benji because Pinot, Carapaz, Igita, Carthy, Gisbert, have I missed anyone? Hessink. That's 6 really strong guys for 5-6% climbs. and I still thought they were the favorite at that point. But the time gaps, the time gaps were really suspect on second last Pure Nile.
Yes, certainly. And the added aspect is that with Almeida pacing in front of the peloton's giving gas as well. The breakaway needs to keep giving gas, otherwise they won't make it. So there's like pressure in all three groups to ride as fast as possible to the top of that second last Purnell as well. And the aspect that I saw there was that the gap was significantly lowering still from like the peloton to the front. So it was going to become close at the end if Almeida wasn't initially caught, because Almeida's the one that keeps this peloton moving. Almeida's the one that triggers an Astana and a Movistar to do stuff. And Astana had plans on that second last Purnell. And it was so unclear because the TV broadcast missed the entire attack that I'm going to be talking about, but I'm 90% sure that this is how the situation went. Astana and Movistar paced towards the top of Purnell. Astana was the one that significantly set it up to the actual top of the second last Purnell. And in the meanwhile, we see a shot from the front where after Oliveira was done, helping Almeida, Soler was the next one that helped Almeida, came a bit late, Almeida paced a bit on his own, but also we saw Nibali dropping from the front. And we saw him dropping from the front at the same time that we saw a shot from the GC group near the top of Purnell with only 10 riders left, where Lopez apparently had attacked, and Rodriguez was off the back. So Rodriguez, consequences of the crash most likely. We don't know if he could have been there without the crash. I would have said yes, looking at how seriously he was banged up. And it really wasn't well timed in this situation either. As in, Nibali should be there at the top. Lopez should try and link up at the top. But the issue is also there's still a gap between the two at the top here. So that didn't really work out. Lopez making a gap on a climb like this, it's unlikely. Or would you say it succeeded knowing that Rodriguez was behind for a bit?
It was a lot of really clunky satellite riders sort of stuff today. UAE, Movistar, and Astana, it was like clunky timing, and even Soler, Benji, when
Yeah.
like I don't know if he keeps pedaling. It just seems he's dropped from the group. Like Nibali came back, I think, quicker, but we got no
Yeah.
images really of the Lopez attack. But when Soler was coming back for Almeida, it took so long for him to come back. I was like, you see, I think he was just riding with the Burgos rider and they're having a chat. And then eventually Almeida caught up to him and then he started accelerating. Soler did a really, really good job. But yeah, unfortunately for them, Soler brings Almeida back to the breakaway. They dangle 30 seconds ahead of the GC group, which swells Turner or Gegenhardt, brings Rodriguez back to
But
that group.
that's not like the front breakaway, right? We're talking about the second group, right? In that
Yeah, yeah.
situation, just to sketch it properly for the people listening.
And there's ahead still the group of Hessink, Pinot, Carapaz, and Gita. They reach the base of Pional, and Carapaz is in full finesse mode. I think maybe to his detriment today, Gisbert goes up the road early there. They have a gap of 130 at the base. Hessink off camera, I don't think it was shown, him attacking the Carapaz Pinot group, bridges across to Gisbert, and then we have behind the group coming back. They catch Almeida. We have a group of Almeida, Ayuso, Mas, Evenepoel, Van Wilder, obviously, Hindley, Aronsman, O'Connor, and it's got satellite riders coming back. Carapaz comes back for Rodriguez, who just makes it there. Verona comes back for Enric Mas. Oliveira was pacing for Enric Mas. So it was clear Benji Movistar Mas had diamonds in the legs. And to his credit, he was super aggressive today. I think he was stronger than Evenepoel on this finish today.
Possibly. We saw the move by Movistar setting something up on that final Pure Null then, and I gotta be honest, I was starting to think, okay, Hissing, Gisbert, Hissing dropping Gisbert at the front, and it became closer and closer with the peloton behind because that peloton started moving closer to Almeida as well. And that being the case is still Almeida being in front of the peloton group, which means that Astana and Sofov are still pacing. Nibali paced a lot at the initial part of this final Pure Null to make sure they get closer towards Almeida, to the point where I think Lopez was one of the first ones to also make a move, but you're right. I think Movistar was the proper fighter here in today's stage in the GC group. And I don't actually know the order of the riders that did the work, but I think Oliveira was first and then Verona was the next one to work. Or did Mas attack towards Verona? Which situation was it?
I couldn't figure it out. Like Verona came back from the break. He'd been marking like Carapaz. He looked good climb for him. Then he's dropped back, and then Mas lets his gap go, and suddenly Verona's pacing the Australians and Aronsman. And I was like, what's this? And I think then Mas did attack. Mas attacked through a feed zone. He attacked at
Yeah.
least 5 or 6 times. 5% gradient is just, it's not much to work with. It's really tough. It's a shame this third week. I think 7-8% must drop Evenepoel. Not a huge gap, but I think he gaps him at the end. And he nearly did. Evenepoel threw in an attack, but Hessing's up the road. He's got 30 seconds, and it was kind of like when Kranich was ahead of ahead of Uran and Harada and Co. the other day. They attack, they stop, they attack, they stop. It goes 30 to 20 to 25 to 18 to 22. And then suddenly Enric Mas throws in one last big haymaker, and Robert Hessing gets Gino-mated Paris-Nice. Mas catches up to him. I don't think Mas was trying to let him win the stage. I think Mas was using Hessing to lead him out for the sprint for the stage. To just recover. I think in hindsight, if he'd kept the pressure on, maybe he beats Evenepoel. But in the end, Evenepoel sits in the wheel of Mas, gets in the drops, and puts 2 seconds into him on the road and wins his first road stage at this Vuelta. In red, uphill, defensive, sort of. He attacked a few times, but a nice win nonetheless. I would have liked to see a battle on 7 to 8%. Mas second, and Hessing third. What do you make of Enric Mas' shape, Benji Movistar's tactics, Evenepoel's shape compared to week one? I think Evenepoel is 2% off his week one shape.
Possibly, but I will add that I do think that Enric Mas' shape right now is notably better than in week one. Although he was stronger, maybe it's that he is the one that stayed on level while Remco Evenepoel drew. Nah, I think
Yeah.
Mas
No,
became
that's what I
probably a
think.
bit better as well. I think a tiny bit, at least compared to week one. And with Enric Mas, it's also the fact he's been criticized a lot for not attacking. Now he's attacking, and now he's being roasted for catching Robert Hessink on the line because he attacked too much. Like, come on,
Robert
guys.
Hessing's not a neo pro. Like he's made a lot of money in his career. I think. Like he's had a good
Yeah,
career. It's all fair in love and war.
exactly. But also next to that, there's also I think the parkour is doing Enric Mas a bit dirty. Obviously, we knew the parkour for ages, but if this last week is harder, I'm gonna put my hand in the fire and say that Enric Mas gains time on Remco Evenepoel.
Oh, I think so too. Yeah, like he was strong on Sierra Nevada, really strong. Had me confused, and he's Enric Mas is so much stronger than every other GC contender, but Evenepoel. And I was
Yeah,
even thinking I was like, why isn't Remco attacking? And I think Mas stop start was really strong. So yeah, this is the thing though. The incumbent GC advantage when you can play defensive in the wheel in third week is so big when the gradients are 5% and the draft benefit is
yeah.
over 5%. That's why that early lead and surviving Sierra Nevada, as we said in Rest Day Recap 2, just puts Remco in the box seat.
And the question that I have now for you is that we've got this stage that on paper wasn't gonna be as aggressive and crazy as we had today. Like, we said that stage 19 is not the craziest stage, where we'll talk about it in a bit, but stage 20 is also one, the Puerto Navacerrada stage that had gradients of 5-ish%, and we saw moves in those kind of climbs today that we probably weren't expecting. A Lopez trying satellite rider move on the second last pure null, Almeida going really early on the stage. Do you think that with the crazy stuff we're seeing on a stage like today, that stage 20 might be crazier than we are expecting?
I think so. I think it's going to kick off. Like Almeida and UAE are not going to go down without swinging. Lopez, don't know what he's going to do.
There's a
And I
car on the
think
side of the road on stage 20. You can hop into.
maybe stage. Movistar looks a bit better than Quickstep right now. Oliveira's getting in any break he
Yeah.
wants. Verona's strong. Ballo didn't really do too much, I don't think, but it was Quickstep were just Van Wilder, and then at the base of the final climb, he dropped pretty quickly. So I think Mas, there's that one of that. The second last climb is like 7%. I think the Macuerdo, whoever you say, I don't have it in front of me. It is a bit steeper.
Morquera.
Mas has to go on that one, and have a satellite rider. But even so, I'll remind you of the GC gaps. He's 2 minutes oh 07 behind Evenepoel after today's stage, with Evenepoel taking 4 bonus seconds on him. Ayuso on 5:14. Lopez moves into fourth on 5:56. Poor Carlos Rodriguez moves into fifth. He lost a lot of time on the final climb because of his injuries on 6:49. Almeida knocking at the door of fifth on 7:14. Aronsman, O'Connor, Uran, Hindley, no changes between them through the top 10. Pino finished with the GC group, but he was in the break today, so Pat tip to him. Got in the break, just didn't go with Hessink. And Gino Maida was a bit stronger. So yeah, tomorrow's stage, as you mentioned, Benji, it's 139 Ks from Talavera de la Reina. They do the Puerto del Pelago twice, 9 Ks, 6%. It is pretty steady. It's not too steep in places at all, really. Just the second kilometer is 8%. The rest is like 5.5. And the climb before it's about 5.6 Ks, 4%. It's about 20 Ks of climbing punctuated by 2 short descents. I guess UAE, what would I do if I was UAE tomorrow? Short stage. What would I do? I would probably get McNulty and Soler in the break, or Oliveira. I'd try and get 2 in the break. And then I would have Almeida attack again on the final climb and have those guys pace the descent, and then hope Evenepoel doesn't chase. The problem with that is that Astana and Movistar will chase, so time gain will be small. But I guess you
Actually,
don't know if you don't try.
I think Ineos might now be the one that might start pacing if UAE does that, because Rodriguez lost his fourth position to Lopez today because of the consequences of dropping on that final climb, because of the consequences of his crash. He's now on 6:49 in GC while Almeida is on 7:14. That's only, oh god, basic math, we're terrible at this, 25 seconds is my guess. And if that is indeed true, those 25 seconds, then that is really close. And I would love to see Almeida attack, like you were saying. Try and hop over one more rider in GC. That puts him in the top 5 of GC. I think that's his goal right now. And then UE is trying to defend the top 3 plays and the top 5 plays on the last 2 GC stages. I think that's the perfect situation for that team. I think Almeida needs to make that move, similar to what you're saying. I'd argue that McNulty launched him well today, though, so perhaps McNulty should be there to launch him on the second climb, while Oliveira and the other guy, Soler, could be there in the first climb, something like that. I don't know. Like, they'll figure it out, I hope, because I'd love to see that, because it would make tomorrow's stage a lot better than just the breakaway stage. But it's also so short that it reminds me of those 2017. There was a stage in the Tour de France where I spoke about it yesterday, I think, that millimeter sprint between Uran and Barguil. That stage was also short, had multiple climbs to the point where it wasn't sure whether GC or breakaway, and it kind of became a situation where some riders went into the break, GC tried a bit of stuff, Landa tried to bridge earlier on of something. I don't know, something crazy, but in general, it's that kind of stage where it could be. It's likely going to be a rider that attacks early, and I don't think it would be easy for a GC rider to win, but I don't believe that no GC riders will do anything on this stage. I dare to say even a Mosmet might try something on that second climb, because we're talking about the last 2 mountain stages here. I don't expect Mas to wait until the Puerta de Navacerrada stage if he can try again tomorrow, you know?
And also, Quickstep don't look good. They don't look that good. So
Mm-hmm.
why not put them under a lot of pressure on that first climb? 6%, 10 Ks plus. See if Renko's having to control everything. I would start to put them under pressure there and build something for. I mean, stage 20, yeah, is looking much more difficult for them to control as well, and a better place for raids. I'm going with the downhill flat finish tomorrow, free Verona, but he won't get freed. I am going with the Duck to win solo, Lawson
Craddock.
Craddock. Yeah, he's
Okay.
been so good. This is the stage that suits him a bit more.
Yeah.
He's got to get away. He can't be with. I think there'll be a group of, I don't know. Can Pedersen win this stage, Benji? If it doesn't kick
Oh,
off.
nah, I don't believe it. Fuck that. It's not happening. After today's crash as well,
I crashed today.
I
True,
think they
because yeah, the
might
top of
play
the
it.
final climb is
Yeah.
43 kilometers. So
I don't
Who have
know.
you got?
I'm always like leaning towards Groupama riders on parcours like this because I swear we had Store winning a stage where we had multiple climbs like this during the stage last year. And then also in the Tour de France, we had that stage where I saw Godu fighting with Colbrelli behind Conrad or something. I vaguely remember something like that at least. And Pinot won a stage in, I don't even know when Pinot won a stage like this, but he probably did at some point. So because of that vague memory, I'm going to say, do I want to say Thibaut Pinot? I don't know.
How the
Twitter's going to
fuck?
be
How
so
is
hyped if
Pinot?
Pinot
How
wins.
is he going to win
He's going to
this?
attack early, typical Pinot style.
There's a descent though.
Yeah, but he can. His descending's not terrible these days. It's gotten a lot better from when it was the worst time. It's not amazing
Yeah.
either. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know what to say anymore for this last Dream Mountain stage. Like, this is not an obvious victory for a certain rider for me. I'm gonna steal your pick from yesterday. Fuck it, Luis Leon Sanchez.
Yeah, I was going to go him again. Craddock, Lewis Leon. I'm going Richard Carapaz to win. I think he'll win a small group sprint and he will play the other
Yeah,
guys like he did at Gita in Catalunya. GC, I don't expect big gaps, to be honest. So yeah, that's tomorrow's stage. It is a shame that I don't know. It's a shame. I feel like this third week is just missing one proper mountain stage that's really hard.
yeah.
Maybe stage 20 will kick off, but anyway, it's yeah. Who do you think? Like I'm thinking of if I'm Ineos, Rodriguez is banged up. I don't like. I'm just thinking through the UA thoughts, Benji. Almeida does that today. Did that help Ayuso? Like, I don't really understand. Like, because to me, Almeida would have paced the last climb for Ayuso, who I think has a good punch to try and win the stage. Um, are they still like at this point? Would you still say do your own thing, each of them, or would you
Yeah.
say it's time for Almeida? Really, you wouldn't have Almeida ride for Ayuso yet.
Right now, not
He's
because
third on GC.
Almeida has a chance of entering the top 5 as well. It's much better to be third and fifth than third and sixth. The top 10 is a meh in Grand Tour. Top 5 is amazing in the Grand Tour. So I'm saying Almeida has to go all out to get over Rodriguez now. They're in that situation. They can't switch around now. The gap is also not that crazy between Ayuso and Almeida. It's still like 2 minutes only. Like, Ayuso hasn't looked the strongest of the two in the last 2 days, if I gotta be
No,
honest. So
true.
I'd say Almeida switches off on a solo mission again tomorrow. He gets over Rodriguez, sees how close he can get towards Lopez with that move. And if that becomes a battle, then they might even get third and fourth in this Grand Tour. You never know, because Almeida's having a good Grand Tour last week, it seems. But nah, Almeida's on his mission tomorrow. It's going to happen.
Alrighty, Benji's team Almeida. I'm not so sure. He's got great legs. Does he have the timing? No, I think the breakaway has to win tomorrow. Anyway, that's all from us. Bit of a short recap. Evenepoel wins his first road stage of the Vuelta. Thanks to Zwift, as always, and we'll see you with the recap of stage 19 tomorrow. Ciao.